Hello again. Yeah, I'm making another review pretty darn early. But, here's the thing. The fan that I was doing all those requests for brought up some good points, and I wanted to make a review for an episode that I personally feel the need to address. In my opinion, the Brony fandom has some ideas that are good for the show and some that aren't. For example, I really don't know why so many people want to see more adventure storylines from My Little Pony. I understand they want something that deviates from the norm, but that's exactly the thing that makes me think it won't work. My Little Pony's writing seems right at home when it's writing 22 minutes of slice-of-life comedy. When the plot lines are about slice-of-life comedy, the writing's really tight, comedic, and just really good. But when the adventure storylines end up showing up, the writing doesn't become as comfortable or as well thought out as you'd expect, leading to some plot holes that I seem to notice every now and then. Plot holes that take me out of the experience. Not that I dislike these adventure storylines, it's just I feel that as individual stories, they don't hold up as well as some of the best slice of life episodes. With, of course, a few exceptions. So I decided to watch the first two episodes of My Little Pony again, and seeing as now it's been over 5 years after the first two episodes, which debuted on October 10th, 2010, I can see that the show has gone a long way, and it's not in this episode's favor. And it's unfortunate, considering that the first two episodes are the only episodes, with the exception of The Ticketmaster, where Lauren Faust was the writer for them, and it's probably the two episodes that I have the most problems with. But still, I love the beginning of the episode. I was a little taken back by the overly girly fantasy elements, especially with the introduction, but I was getting interested once Twilight started talking. Hearing her use words like precipice, threshold, and brink in a little girl's show was actually pretty interesting, considering that wide vocabulary usually is not utilized in these types of shows. And the first episode, in my opinion, has very good pacing, as it introduces us to all of our main characters in a very orderly fashion and introduces us to their basic traits. Honestly, to fit the introduction of 6 main characters, well, 7 if you include Spike, into a 22-minute episode to start the series was the case of how this episode was planning to, pace itself, then I'd say Lauren succeeded in that regard. So, a lot of my criticisms actually are for Part 2, Elements of Harmony, not Part 1, Mare and the Moon. However, I do have one thing to comment on when it comes to Mare and the Moon. How come Twilight didn't realize that Princess Luna was Nightmare Moon, especially since she was the one who told the story to the audience, or told the story to herself in this case. And she is the one to identify Nightmare Moon after apparently no pony remembers that Nightmare Moon, was sealed in the moon for 1,000 years. That never made sense to me. As for Part 2, I believe the biggest problem with that episode is pacing. Here's the thing. Part 1 had perfect pacing. It introduced us to our characters in an orderly fashion, it got their basic traits out of the way, and it introduced all of us to why these characters would be good friends with Twilight. And it even introduced us to a few side characters who would become relevant in the later seasons, like Granny Smith, Apple Bloom, Big Macintosh, Mayor, etc. Part 2 has none of this. It all feels very rushed and very contrived, as every single character gets one quick minute to show off their element of harmony and why they are the heroes of the series. Introducing the characters in 22 minutes made sense to me, but getting the conflict underway and then solving it within another 22 minutes feels very undisciplined when it comes to its writing. Heck, Legend of Korra took an entire season to establish its conflict and then get that underway. After introducing it in the first episode, they still had 12 other episodes. And My Little Pony only got 1 for the story arc. Now, granted, it does introduce us to Stephen Magnet, who would make a surprise return in Slice of Life, and it also introduced us to Giggle at the Ghosties, which I will not be singing. I just don't feel like it today. My throat's a little sore. Anyways, it's a song that I really didn't like at first, but it grew on me over time. And another reason I'm not singing it is because a few of the lyrics go way too fast for me to remember, even after I recently rewatched it. But I will admit, the song got swept up by the other songs of season 1 by the time Winter Wrap Up, At the Gala, and Cupcakes came out. Maybe I'll review Call the Cutie next. So, anyways, here's what I do to solve that problem. I'd make sure that the Elements of Harmony episode would be a series of episodes. Personally, I think Hasbro should have made it a 72-minute long film to start the series. Sort of like what they did with Powerpuff Girls. But preferably it would have been a series of episodes. You'd keep the same first episode completely intact with almost zero changes, but instead of squeezing everything into a second episode, you'd give each main character her own episode, then have a final episode which has Twilight and her friends battling Nightmare Moon. That way, the plot lines don't seem rushed. So yeah, overall, this episode has a lot of problems. I think some of the conflicts were way too rushed, and I felt, as a character introduction, it doesn't really introduce us to the real motivations of our characters for a lot of the series. I personally think the Ticketmaster did a much better job when Lauren Faust allied herself with Amy Keating Rogers, my favorite writer. So, yeah. But the animation's still impressive. It still has an okay song. And it does have some nice atmosphere with Nightmare Moon. But overall, I only feel compelled to give it a 5 out of 10. It's average at best and hilariously outdated at its worst. See you later.